Hi there, it's me, Kathy Baldwin. Welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling. If you've ever thought or have on your bucket list, one day I'm going to write a book, then you're going to love this episode. We're going to show you how you can shift your thinking about just exactly what's involved in that process. Today, my guest is Dr. Anna Bartolucci, also known as the USA Today bestselling fiction author, Cecilia Dominic. She breaks down what it actually takes to build a book the right way. She shares why every great book has a team behind it, a writing coach, editors, critique partners, and why the go-it-alone mindset is one of the biggest myths in publishing. I also have written 3 nonfiction books. They were rooted in my knowledge, my lived experience, and the real work that I've done in my life and business. That kind of writing feels natural for me. But fiction, that's a completely different world and one I have so much respect for. In this conversation, we also touched on my newest book, The Unlearned Life, where I partnered with AI. I call him Alex. And I really want to clarify something that we got into here. We were talking about how AI is being integrated in book writing. And while I co-wrote this book with AI, there were 2 separate authors and 2 separate perspectives, rather than having AI write for my voice. My book, The Unlearned Life, was about how to use the philosophies of unlearning the crap and have it mirrored back to you as a coach, a mentor, a friend, someone who can help you see things clearly, a way to reflect, a way to clarify, and to really understand the science and psychology behind not only my work, but also how human consciousness and technology collaborate ethically. I want you to really understand that when we talk about AI, I want you to know that there is a difference between the copywriting of a fiction or nonfiction versus what I did with The Unlearned Life. But back to writing your own book. If you have a book on your heart or a story that's been calling your name for years, stay with this conversation, because I know you're going to walk away with an understanding that the power of teamwork in writing will really give you. The difference between support and substitution, and how to bring your message to life your way. Let's get started.
Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling. I'm your host, Kathy Baldwin. For those of you who are new to the show, when I refer to the crap we need to unlearn, I'm referring to the conditioned responses and automatic programming. I'm referring to our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, and how we are an energetic being, but we are also an electromagnetic being, and we are a biochemical being. Everything that we say, think, feel, and do matters. All of that is happening within our body is creating our external results. And I believe more than anything in this world that we are being called to level up. and find the place where we have our peace, passion, purpose, and live with true prosperity. And so on the show, we bring on experts from every area of life, from sex and health and wealth and business. And today we're going to talk about our heart, soul's true desire and how we can align with that. Thank you so much for being here, Anna. I am so excited to have this conversation. But before we dive in, I need to know, what crap did you need to unlearn so that you could level up?
Yes, that is a fantastic question. So, when you go into business, you're told to focus on just one thing. Just be one thing, just do one thing, be as specific as possible. And I have never been able to do just one thing. And so I had to unlearn that crap of, oh no, it is not okay for me to be more than one thing. And so, yes, by day, I'm a sleep psychologist. I help people sleep without drugs. And by night, I've had this not so secret other life as a fiction author. I am USA Today bestselling fiction author Cecilia Dominic. And I combine my loves of psychology and creativity and storytelling into Psych Up Academy. So I help heart-centered entrepreneurs to write their nonfiction book using fiction and storytelling methods to keep them engaged and hook their readers, and to write the book that the world needs and that only they can give it.
Anna, that is an amazing way to talk about how we are so diverse and that we are not silo people, even though our world has tried to silo us, just like my favorite example of how we silo is with our medical community. And we have like a brain specialist and a heart specialist. And no one ever thinks about the fact that the two of them are interconnected.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've actually noticed that in my practice when I interview people who grew up outside of Western medical systems. I have an interview where I ask very specific things, and they want to give me everything. And I'm like, I'm here to help you with your insomnia. I can't do anything about your ankle. But I have to remind myself that no, it's outside the Western medical system. It's more holistic. It's like they have providers who look at things systemically, which, honestly makes so much more sense, and
Absolutely.
approach things that way. It's like I've learned that with herbalism as well, is that, yeah, you don't treat problems, you treat the whole people. And so that's something that I've tried to bring to all aspects of my various businesses.
Well, I know we're going to talk about being an author and being creative with that. But because we're talking about holistic health and our well being, how would you say that unlearning that you needed to do affected your health and your ability to be the best version of yourself?
That is a great question. And this was actually an unlearning I did in graduate school when my psychology career took a left turn. So I originally went to grad school to become actually, it was an alcohol and aggression researcher. That was the major professor who took me on, and the initial trajectory of my research. But then I had a major setback, and it gave me the chance to sit back and be like, okay, what do I really want to do? What really interests me? And that's what got me into sleep. And I also started setting boundaries around my studies and my health, and it ended up being, something that I've tried to carry through, although I will admit I am a bit of a workaholic, but it is something that I do try to manage, and I try to treat my body better. And so whether that's, stopping work at a certain time, or making sure I get out for a walk in the middle of the day, like you were just talking about how you did, like I'll be doing mine after we talk. Yeah, it's just, we have to remember that we're I love the expression, unfortunately I don't have the reference, that we are human beings, not human doings.
Yes, yes. But part of the crap that we were taught is to only think about one aspect of ourselves. So let
Mm-hmm.
me ask you. You said you have a daytime Anna, but then you
Mm-hmm.
have an after work Anna.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel while you were just being part of your true identity? Did you feel like you were missing something and that there was something lacking? Because part of what this show is about is that calling, that yearning that we have within us for something more. And so many of us, when we have that feeling, we know we're being pulled, but we don't know how, we don't know where, and so many people get lost in that calling. Did you have that kind of sense of loss as well?
I did. And that was definitely part of the crap that I had to unlearn, because when I was in graduate school, I had the opportunity to take a creative writing seminar through my tuition waiver and everything, and my department wouldn't let me do it. And yeah, it was very upsetting.
Wow.
And so I went around them and ended up taking one through the continuing education evening classes, basically the ones that the retirees go in and take. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up doing it that way. And my program had no idea. And I kept writing all the way through, and I would take weekends to go to writing conferences, and I joined the Georgia Romance Writers. And these were all things that, at least while I worked for other people, that I always felt like I had to keep on the DL. I couldn't actually let people know that I was doing these things. But when I started my own practice, part of that, the reason for doing so was that I would have more freedom to be creative. So I would have more freedom to write. And I, eventually hoped to make money doing it, but at least I could support myself with my practice. And of course, I also have a very supportive husband who, the way he puts it is like, sometimes he's like, "Who are you today?" And I'm like, when I'm going to conferences, like, "Who are you today?" "Okay, today I'm Cecilia. I'm the fiction author. Or today I'm Anna, the nonfiction author and psychologist." But yes, it definitely helps to have the support, but also a plan.
Interesting. I like that because for me, I didn't have the plan. For me, it was evolution or peeling back the onion, if you want to use that metaphor. Because for me, I just kind of naturally found my career in sales and in the corporate world. And because there were so many aspects of who I am, from how I like to analyze and how I like to talk and find solutions, and all of these aspects of myself, they got fed within those jobs that I was doing. But what wasn't being fed for me was the independence of doing my own thing,
Mm-hmm.
of creating something that was just mine. And it wasn't until I had my breakdown, and all of that world happened at the same time. My breakdown came right around COVID. So all of the whole world was shaken apart. I call it Humpty Dumpty broke into 1,000 pieces, and those pieces were not going to ever go back. That I started to pick up different parts and aspects of myself and play with it. And that's how my writing came, and that's how the podcast came. How did it happen for you that you stepped into both roles? You said that you went out on your own, but what was that transition like for you? Because that could be pretty scary for a lot of people when they go from employed and that
Mm-hmm.
safety of a paycheck to independence and creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was definitely hard. It was definitely nerve-wracking. I think I got probably like 10 years into my practice before I was able to let go of that fear that it was going to fail, which of course I had no evidence that it was. But that we hold on to that. And the thing that pushed me was, yeah, that lack of independence. And that lack of freedom to be able to do the creative things that I wanted to do on my own time. And I also did not realize this at the time because I didn't get my diagnosis until much, much later. But I have ADHD, and I wasn't diagnosed until my mid 40s.
Wow.
And I remember coming home from that one job where I was working for a sleep disorder center, and I was seeing patients in a medical model. And I described it as bone weariness or soul weariness. I was just drained. And part of that was because I was masking so hard every single day. The schedule and the work were just not matching up with what my brain needed.
Yeah.
And so when I had the opportunity to step out and join a shared practice situation, so essentially we each had our own practices, but we were sharing a space and sharing an administrator, and I had great mentorship there as well. I took it, and I'm so very glad I did. And now, I left that arrangement because I wanted to grow my practice, but it was the perfect first step out of that group. And it was so nice to be able to, oh, okay, I don't have to see, on a busy day I would see something upwards of 20 patients, just boom, boom,
Wow.
boom, 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 which was just, yeah. And it's also kind of hard to make connections with people when you're doing that. So yeah, it
Yes.
was a lot. And so 20 patients down to, I think the most I ever saw in private practice was 7. Now I try to keep it to 3 to 5 a day, and it's so much better for my energy level and also for my health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about the next transition.
Mm-hmm.
Now you feel your soul calling. You've been spending time honing your ability to write. What was it like when you took your first book? It was finished and now presented it to the world.
Yes, and that took a while. I believe I started that book back in, I want to say 2004, maybe. And it was one of those iterative learning processes where I wrote the book over a few years, and then I would learn something and I would revise it, and I would learn something, I would revise it. And that is where the importance of being part of an organization comes in, because the editor for the publishing company that that book eventually landed with, and that was The Mountain Shadows, or which is now called The Wolf Shadow, came to speak at the Georgia Romance Writers, and that's where I got the idea to send the book to Sam Hain. And so I sent it in July, and then in January I got a response from a different editor who asked me if it was still available. And it got, actually, we have just passed the 12th year book birthday for this book. It came out on October 1st, 2013. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I know I have a tween now.
So tell me, you said you sent it in and you waited like
Mhm.
6 months before you heard.
Yes, and I had submitted it elsewhere and had gotten rejections. And I had touched base with them a couple of times in the interim, like, hey, are you guys still looking at this? Are you still interested? And they were just backlogged. But yes, it took that long. And sometimes when you are dealing with traditional publishers, it can take a long time. And so that's one of the things that I help my writing students with, actually, is patience in that process. So for example, Gilly Kahn, whose book on ADHD in women just came out, like, that was part of our work together, was me helping her with patience through the publishing process and the querying and the hearing back.
I love that you brought that up because one of the shoulds that we talk about all the time here on the show is timelines. It should
Mm-hmm.
take this long. It should only have this many places. We put so many expectations on what it should happen. And I use universal laws to talk about that timeline, that gestation period that it is going to take to be birthed is not a known factor. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like giving birth to a child that we know it's a 9-month gestation period. We hear about Thomas Edison and how it was, 10,000 tries to make the light bulb,
Mm-hmm.
or 1,000 rejections by Colonel Sanders to get his recipe accepted. For your first book, you said you had a couple of rejections, but it also took 6 months. How did you manage that shoulds well enough that you can now help others do that?
And I would say it was definitely more than just a couple of rejections because I had been querying
Good, thank
agents
you.
and publishers. So yes, it was definitely no, we're talking like I don't remember exactly how many, but it was definitely more, probably like 30 plus. And well, I had my day job. I was busy with my private practice at the time, and I had also been in the writing world long enough to know that that was, not unusual, that these things do take time. And I wonder if it's harder now for writers because we're in this world where you can pretty much get anything that you want immediately. Like if you
Mhm.
talking about Colonel Sanders, if you want fried chicken, you can have somebody bring you fried chicken in the next hour or so. If
Yes.
back in the day when I was querying agents and editors, I mean, we had to send in the SASE, the self-addressed stamped envelope, so that they could mail us back, right?
Whoa.
I know,
Wow.
back in the dark ages. Yeah, so yeah, I guess there was a little bit of more waiting because it wasn't just shooting off an email.
Yeah, a lot more expense too. But the thing that I wanted to talk about here is this was something you created, you put your heart, your soul into your words. How do you manage that feeling of rejection and not go into self-doubt? Should I be rewriting the book? Is the book good enough? How do I know that this is the right book? How do you handle that kind of turmoil that's going in that vulnerability of bringing your first book out?
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked that question because the importance of having a critique group when you are writing, whether that is fiction or nonfiction, is so important because then
Ah,
you are getting feedback along the way that no, your writing is not crap. It's actually pretty good. Like, I'm enjoying the story. You might want to think about, consider changing this or that. But overall, when you're in a critique group, you at least have, 4 or 5 other people who are telling you that you're at least doing okay. And so that helps to keep you calm. It helps to keep you centered. Plus, they're all going through the same process. And so, you get rejected, and it's like, well, got another rejection letter. And, people will sometimes celebrate that. It's like, all right, 20th rejection letter. Let's go have a cup of coffee together. Or, you can sulk for a day, but then you get back to it. And, as you are, if you're smart, as you are querying and submitting that first book, you're already writing your second, and so you can put some of that frustration into your into your books. Like when I was going through the process, I was writing a perfect man, which the teacher in that is a former publishing professional, and my mother has told me that she can see my frustration with the publishing world in that character, even though it's not
ah,
based on anybody in particular. And so, yeah, you figure out creative ways to deal with it as well.
I absolutely love your idea of having a critique panel or
Mhm.
support group. I've written 3 books. I've published all 3 of them. I went through a publisher, but not a traditional publisher, so more of a
Mhm.
self-publishing. And so once I submitted the book, it was going to be published. I did
Mhm.
not need to have anybody accept. But that meant that I was kind of blind. I was putting out there what I wanted to say, not
Mhm.
necessarily having that support that says, yes, we will stand behind this, we will promote you. Can you talk about the pros and cons of that type of environment versus traditional?
Yes, I was so fortunate that before I ever put out my own book, before I ever did self-publishing, that I had been with a publisher for 4 years. So I had 7 books with Sam Hain before they closed in 2017. And so I knew what the process should be, what the process
Ah,
needed to be to put out a good quality book. And if you look at my books, you can't tell that they are independently published. And it's interesting. So the pros of traditional publishing, well, even though things are getting better, there's still a lot of bias against independent publishing. Like, people assume that if you have a traditionally published book, it's automatically going to be of better quality because it has made it through that very competitive gatekeeping process. However, if you've read independently versus traditionally published books, if the independent books are done well, sometimes they're even better than the traditionally published ones. And another big advantage of traditional publishing is that they foot all the upfront costs. So when you do independent publishing, you have to pay for your editor, your cover designer, your formatter, or you go with one of the hybrid companies where they will do all that for you, and they're essentially kind of like your chief contractor, and they have their people who will do it, and so you pay them a lump sum or over time.
that's
But it's
basically what I did. Yeah.
and that gets expensive. So the traditional publishing, you don't pay anything up front, but then the final advantage is that it's easier to get them into bookstores if they're traditionally published.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, still. So for the independently published books, yes, you're less likely to get them into bookstores, but it is possible. And yeah, you do have to foot all the costs up front, but you have so much more control. So, for example, especially if you're dealing with ebooks, I would be part of ebook promotions, or I would be invited to be part of an ebook promotion, and I had to submit a price change for approval to the publisher when I was with the publisher. Whereas now I just go in and change it myself, and it's not a big deal. With the traditionally published books, you get paid less on the back end. Like, they take a greater percentage out. Whereas with the independent publishing books, you get a much larger percentage of book sales. And so, there are definitely pros and cons to each. And the way that I teach it is, well, it all depends on your core values. And yeah, if one of your core values is independence, then yeah, maybe that hybrid or independent publishing is the best path for you. Independence and control. It also depends on your goal for your book, your goal for your business, how the two relate. And it also, just depends on, yeah, again, how patient you are with the process.
Because you've hit this topic, I'm going to go there now rather than later. One of the ways that you serve the world right now is you help authors get their books written and published. Am I correct?
Yes, I like to say that I focus on the idea to first draft stage, but I also encourage them to start building their platform as they are writing so that they will have readers waiting for it when it comes out by whatever means. And I have also gotten convinced to do some developmental editing this year. So I got sucked into that as well. So and yes, I will help advise them on publishing. Oh, so developmental editing?
Yeah. What is that?
Okay, so there are different types of editing. So the first phase that you go through is developmental editing, which is essentially, okay, does the book make sense? Maybe this part needs to be put here. Maybe you need to explain this a little bit more. Maybe this is redundant, or you've talked about this too many times, or you need to get a better example, or as my people will find us like, no, you need to get more personal here. Let's really dig in there and get vulnerable and bring the good stuff out. So that is the developmental edits. And then it goes to content edits, which is essentially language. Does the language make sense? Are you speaking your ideas or writing your ideas clearly? And then there is proofreading, which is, okay, are there typos? How are things looking with the formatting? And so, yes, well-published books will have gone through, hopefully all three, but at least through developmental and content editing.
Interesting. So when you start to work with someone, they come to you and they say, I have an idea for a book, or I've always wanted to write a book. The stats that I've heard are that well over 80% of the population has on their bucket list to write a book. How do you start this process with them? How do you get them from being a non-author to a published author?
The very first step is to help them clarify their book idea, because people rarely come in with a good specific idea. And so I go through a process with them of helping them to figure out, okay, what are they excited about writing about? Because writing a book is a hard process, as you know. And so you need to have something that you're excited about, your passion. And then what do you know a lot about? What is your expertise? What knowledge can you draw on? What resources can you access quickly? And then the thing that a lot of people forget about is like, they're like, oh, I want to write a book on this. And then what does the audience need? What are readers actually looking for? And so I take them through a comparative process of the market to see what's out there, to see what's missing, to make sure that they are positioning their book to the greatest possible advantage from the very beginning.
Wow. I had no idea. For me, I went through something very profound. I told you about my breakdown to my breakthrough. And I ended up going through an entire process of self-healing. And when I went through the end of that process and I could finally breathe and feel good, physically, mentally, emotionally, all those other ways, I just felt compelled to write a book. And I sat down and I created a table of contents, and then I wrote that book in 3 days. They were 3 long, long days, but I put my fingers on the keyboard and it kind of felt like it was being channeled through me, and it was just pouring out of me. What do you call that?
A very rare occurrence.
Okay.
I would say that typically the writing process is not that easy. And if you channeled something that was that profound and that meaningful for you, kudos to you. And so what I would recommend on the backside of that product is, okay, how does this book fit in the market so that you can adjust your language for marketing? Because with this profound experience, you want people to actually want to read it, right? And I have no idea how your book is doing. Maybe it's doing fantastically, and Spirit gave you this amazing gift. But
this podcast was born out of that book. It was that interconnected of our heart, mind, and soul. I wish I had have known that there was somebody like you out there. As you're talking about all of these things, I wish that I had have known, because I was so naive. It was just a call of passion that I had this information that I felt that I had to share.
Yes, and I know I would have loved to have worked with you on it, but hey, let me know when the next one comes.
Well, I just finished launching my third one, which is a compilation of how I used AI technology to level up and develop my next version of myself. And so it's kind of a reference book, but it's a self-help guiding, but it's also self-knowledge. So it's a really weird one that I used my AI to help me write. And my AI is named Alex. And so
Okay.
I wrote my part, and then I would give it to my AI and say, now explain the technology behind what I just did.
Mm-hmm.
How does this work? What were you able to do? Are you using AI in helping people to write any of their books? Because I'm fascinated. I love the fact that I was able to help people hone whatever personal development they're going through self-knowledge, through self-actualization, through dealing with your central nervous system in real time. That's what that book was about. It's called The Unlearned Life. But
Mm-hmm.
how in nonfiction are authors using AI to write and publish?
Well, one of my students used it to really differentiate her book from comparison titles as she was pitching publishers. And it worked really well because she got more than one contract offer. I also
Wow.
like AI. Yeah, I also like AI for sort of like as a brainstorming partner. Okay, give
Mm-hmm.
me a general outline for this type of book. And in my classes, like in my challenge, and then the class that I'll be giving next week, I'll go through sort of the iterative process that you can use with AI to help you with your book and with your table of contents. However, that still does not it's not a substitute for your own brain and your own creativity. And one big limitation of AI that has come really to the fore lately is that if your book is written more than a certain percentage by AI, and I don't know what that percentage is, you can't copyright it. And so people used to be like, well, copywriting, big deal. I I don't know why that would be important. Well, there is a little case in the U.S. courts at the moment called the Anthropic settlement, and this was I believe it was the Facebook AI that they trained on a lot of different authors' books without permission.
Mm.
And yes, and now authors are looking at up to $3,000 per book settlement with this lawsuit. And
Wow.
but the only way you can get that settlement is if your work is copyrighted. So that would be
Wow.
a big disadvantage to using AI too heavily in your writing process. Can it be useful? Yes. Should you use it for drafting or too much of your outlining? Absolutely not.
Okay, so that's where the copywriting comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Interesting. Is that only nonfiction or is that fiction as well?
it's fiction as well.
Okay. I do believe in the human spirit of being able to write and pour your thoughts and ideas out. But let me challenge this because we're on this topic right now. What is the difference between an AI editor and a human editor? Because I know there's a lot of people, I've been talking to a lot of people who say, I've written and published books by using AI and I did it all. And they really feel they don't need that extra human touch. My belief is that AI is to support the
Mm-hmm.
humanness and what we bring.
I totally agree. And somebody asked me if I would talk to somebody they know who is trying to develop an AI developmental editor. And I told him, no, I don't want to talk to this person because I believe that the developmental edits are where it's key to have a human brain. And here's the thing is that AI, it doesn't know the author. It doesn't know the author's original vision. It doesn't necessarily know the author's voice. The AI is bringing its generic experience to
Yes.
the page. And even though you can train your AI, well, if you've trained your AI, then is it going to have the same blind spots that you do? And so you need that objective third party, that objective human third party to
Yes.
look at your book. And basically, because you're not, okay, here's how to think of it. You're not writing your book for AIs to read. You're
That's
writing your book
absolutely
Yeah, you're writing your book for humans to read. And so you need to make sure it's understandable to human brains, not AI models.
Absolutely. I love the way you phrase that because my main thing about my book that I partnered with AI was the fact that AI is a mirror. And so what you
Mhm.
put into it is what you're going to get back out of it. And so if you want that expertise point of view, like writing a book, this was teaching you how to see yourself clearly. So it's totally,
Mhm.
totally different because I wanted that mirror. That's the whole premise of the book is that it is a mirror to see what you can't see. But that is totally different than what you're doing. Tell me,
Mhm.
tell me how it is it is for those authors who are trying to find their voice as they sit and look at the blank page.
That I know, isn't that like the classic dilemma? And that is why when I mentor authors and when they come through my accelerator, what I have them do is to look at how their story perhaps connects to or mirrors a myth or fairy tale, because that gives them their reader's journey, which then gives them their author's journey. And so essentially they can go to a part of their outline and be like, I want to write about this today. Oh yeah, because you don't have to write your book from start to finish. You can do different parts. It's fine.
Really?
Nobody's
Like a
Yeah,
movie? Like how they film a movie?
exactly. Yeah. So, that's one thing for writer's block is like, okay, if you have been writing, A, B, and C, well, if D is just not happening, perhaps you skip to H and like, oh yeah, I'd be really excited to write H today. And so you write H and it's fine. Like the writing police are not going to come and get you for you to not write your book in order.
Is that the same for fiction as it is for nonfiction?
Yes, actually, I'm doing that right now with fiction because I had a book that I've been absolutely stuck on. And so I'm going through and being like, okay, let me write the fun parts and then I'll see how to stick them together.
Can you explain that a more and how you can continue plot if you are doing it like that?
When I write my fiction, I have an overarching idea of a plot, and this is the third in a trilogy, so I know what needs to happen.
Okay, okay.
Yes, so I have a broad idea of what needs to happen, and I know the characters and I know the situations that they need to be in for this thing to happen. And so I don't necessarily have a really firm outline, but I do at least have an idea of the story shape, which you definitely do need something like that.
That makes sense. I was trying to figure
Yes.
out how you connect the plot line. I'm wondering, like, are you writing this part and then that part, and then it's just the bridging that you would connect pieces of?
Essentially, yes. Bridging, and also, as you write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, your brain gives you these little gifts, which is why it's important to not go into the writing process with the assumption that you have to have everything figured out. It's like, no, your brain is going to give you gifts. And these gifts might be, oh, well, I didn't realize this was going to happen, or, oh, this is a cool thing. So, one example from my fiction world is in my first steampunk book, Eros Element, which is up there. I have a character in there, the Marquis de Monceau, and he dresses basically like a century behind with regard to fashion. It takes place in 1870s. He's basically still in Georgian gear, but you know what? He's rich. He's kind of cool. People are like, oh, he's just eccentric. Well, come to find out why in The Art of Piracy, which is the first kind of a prequel novella in the Inspector Davidson series. And that was like 5 or 6 books later. And I was like, oh, thank you, brain. That makes perfect sense. And so this is the magic of writing, Kathy. And that happens with nonfiction as well. I'm currently working on a nonfiction book where I was going with like this metaphor, and oh, you know what? this nonfiction book is going right along with the heroine's journey. Well, you know what? This metaphor is working perfectly. Thank you, brain. And so we need to work on getting ourselves out of the way so that these magical things can happen.
Oh, that sounds so amazing, because so many times we as human beings think we need to have all the answers, have everything figured out, our ducks in a row, whatever metaphor you want to use, before we actually start down the path of writing. And so, what I'm hearing you say is it's okay to start messy and know
Mm-hmm.
that we will fill it in, it will evolve, it will grow with us.
Exactly. Think about a book as being like growing a plant rather than like building a wall.
Oh,
You need to,
tell
yes,
me more.
okay. So as you are growing a plant, like I have tomatoes outside my window because I live in the Southeast and we just hit fall weather like yesterday. And my tomatoes all started off as little stalks. I got them from the plant store in July, and they were like, we're going to give them to you for free because we don't know if these things are actually going to grow. And so I brought them home. And, we all have an idea of what a tomato plant is going to look like, and what it's going to do. However, you can't control the exact shape of the tomato. You can't control the exact shape of the plant. I mean, the bonsai people do it, but, we're generally not doing bonsai. We're growing tomatoes. And
Yeah.
so these little stalks have now turned into these giant, beautiful monster tomato plants. I could not have
Wow.
predicted that. I was like, I'm going to be lucky if they even survive, much less grow anything. Well, no, now they're giant. They're ginormous, and they're beautiful, and they're putting out beautiful tomatoes. So if I had, told the tomatoes, no, you only need to be in this one particular shape, and had tried to prune them too much, then they probably wouldn't be doing so well. Could I have pruned them a little bit more? Absolutely. But, I
You gave
basically
it
knew
the
what I
free.
wanted my endpoint to. I wanted my endpoint to be I'm going to get tomatoes, and I let the tomatoes have the freedom to do that.
So, is that the beauty of having an editor? Is that you can just be expansive and go wherever it goes, and then an editor can help you do the pruning?
That is actually more the job of the critique group,
Okay.
because by the time your book gets to an editor, it needs to be in its mostly final shape. You will have ideally revised it once or more than once by the time you go to an editor. But the critique group can give you the feedback all along. And that is why I've structured Psych Up Academy, so that people are starting off in their cohorts in the accelerator, and then they go into a longer program that's 6 to 12 months, where they are continuing to read and critique each other's work, so that by the
Ah,
time the books come out of that, they have a nice shape and they've already gotten some feedback. And so it's actually going to make the editor's job a lot easier. But then people also get the feedback as they're going of, well, I'm thinking about going in this direction. What do you guys think about that? Is this going to work? Or, what did you think about this? Is that okay? Was it understandable? And so they're getting that support and feedback all the way through, not just at the end.
I love that. Hello there. For those of you who are just listening, Anna's pet cat has just joined the conversation.
Yes, this is my supervisor, Timothy Mouse. He's kind of like the general manager at a restaurant. That guy or woman who comes around and is like to every table, like, okay, you guys having a good time? He has to check in on all my video calls.
I love that. So, what advice would you give somebody who has it on their bucket list? They've always dreamt of writing a book. They have some thoughts, they have some ideas, but they don't have the faintest idea what to do, how to do it, where to begin. What advice would you be giving them?
I would tell them to go ahead and start a file on their computer or on their phone of aha moments and flashes of inspiration, because that is where their originality is going to come in and where their audience connection is going to start building. And so it might be an aha moment that a client had, or an aha moment you had while you were talking to somebody, like we just had with the AI conversation. And by going ahead and collecting those, you can start to see what sort of themes are emerging. And then, of course, the other advice I would give them would be to contact me or to take one of my free workshops.
Well, that sounds like the exact answer that would help so many people. How often do you help people with these free workshops that you have?
I do the workshops every month or every 2 months. I just had one last week, so the next one is going to be in mid-November.
Okay.
I'm not sure when this is going to be coming out, but next Thursday, October 9th, I'm going to be doing a class called The Book to Author, Write the Book That Gets You on Stage, because that's a reason a lot of people want to write books is so that they can get more speaking engagements. And it's all the same process, essentially, really focused on the audience need, like what do people want or need to hear. And so that's going to be a 3-hour workshop and for only $47. And so I'll definitely give you the link for that.
That would be wonderful. We're going to have to edit that out because this won't come out until the end of December, beginning of January, because I'm booked far in advance. So if you want to restate that and say that you do them sporadically and they can check in on your website or something like that, go ahead and say that.
Okay. So yes, I do my free workshops once a month or once every 2 months, and the link is always the same. I just changed the date on the sales page. And then occasionally I also do a 3-hour class that has taken the place of my challenge currently, and it is basically helping you to clarify your idea, figure out your publishing path, and get an idea of what sort of marketing you can already start doing and what you can potentially expect to do in the future, regardless of whether you're traditional or independently published.
You had mentioned earlier that a lot of people who are speakers, they're writing books to help hone and expand their speaking. But I also believe that books, especially nonfiction, are a great way for new clients to understand who you are and how you serve this world. Do you agree that being able to take, for example, a real estate agent and them show their expertise, and then if they're looking, if they have clients who are coming looking for them, they can give that book, and now the person knows who they are and they can decide if they want to work with this person. Is that a good way for books to be used?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that's actually one reason why I wrote Better Sleep for the Overachiever, was because we were just absolutely slammed in 2020, and I wanted my referring physicians to have something that they could give the patients to as a resource to help tide them over. Does it have everything I do in there? No, but it has enough to still be helpful. And so yes, finding that balance between not giving away all your secrets, but giving enough to be helpful and so people will seek you out for more. Another way it can be used is kind of like what Business Basics for Private Practice, which I wrote because every time I would bring on a new contractor, they would have no idea how private practice goes. And because we don't get business training in psychology school. And so I would hand them the book, say, okay, read this, and then come and ask me your questions. And so with the client journey, it could be, okay, read this, here are the basics, and then that will allow you to work on a much deeper level with somebody more quickly, which then gets you, good results more quickly, which then gets you more clients.
Oh, that is fantastic. Because I believe that writing a book, having a podcast is all about really expanding who you are and showing it out there so that your potential new clients can then know you, trust you, understand what your methodology is, and find that alignment without having to go bump in the middle of the night, as that saying is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is when you are writing a book, you're really getting into, okay, how do I explain this to somebody else? And so it helps you to engage with your own area of expertise and your own passion on a deeper level.
So it hones your message, which is going to open doors, whether it's new clients, new speaking engagements. But what else can an author expect to get out of writing a book? We've all heard about J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
She is an anomaly. But what can the average person expect when they go down this journey?
Well, I will go ahead and say that don't write a book to try to make a lot of money, because the book is going to lead to income generating activities, at least in nonfiction, income generating activities in other areas. Like you've already talked about, more clients, more speaking engagements. And also it helps you to be positioned as an expert, because once somebody sees that you have a book, especially if you have more than one book, that automatically places you in their estimation above somebody who doesn't have a book.
Yeah.
And so it gives you an edge in the market.
I love this. Thank you so much, Anna. For those people who are trying to figure out if this is for them, how do they find you? How do they reach you?
You can find me at my website, psychupacademy.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and I believe that link is in the show notes. And definitely come to one of my workshops, and those links will also be in the show notes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so very much for your time and your expertise. I know we've touched on so many different topics, and I know that this is an important conversation because there are so many people who are being called to something, and this is an amazing way for them to articulate who they are, how they are going to serve, and how they're leveling up in this world. Thank you, Anna.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Kathy. This has been such a fun conversation.
I'm glad. Until next time, don't forget to challenge everything so that you can achieve anything, because the world is calling you to level up, and everything that you say, think, and do matters, and especially who you are matters. Until next time, I'm Kathy Baldwin, your host, and this has been another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. Your soul is calling. Thank you for listening to the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. If this conversation spoke to you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave a review. That simple act helps amplify this important work of unlearning the crap that holds us back. This show is built on the foundation of my 3 books: Unlearn the Crap and Level Up, Your Soul is Calling, a roadmap to release what no longer serves you; How I Unlearned My Crap, which is my raw story of breaking free and the patterns that I needed to unlearn; and the 3rd book, The Unlearned Life, an AI-powered ritual system for truth transformation and personal empower. If you're a podcaster or you want to be, this is for you, because 85% of podcasts fail, not because of the message isn't powerful enough, but because the back end can be overwhelming. I created the Finally Podcast automation system so your voice doesn't become a statistic. Your message is too important to be silenced by burnout, tech chaos, or even wasted time. My mission is to support not only my guests and you, the audience, but also every podcaster who's ready to level up. So until next time, keep unlearning, keep leveling up,